This show took Japan's best genre and basically ruined it. Delinquent stories are some of the best stories in manga, and they feature some of the all-time best characters. But as much as I want to like Windbreaker's take on this genre, I can't help but be painfully aware of the show's glaring issues. The main issues being that it isn't even a take on the delinquent genre. All it is a oversimplified cut and paste of like every story that came before it, which explains why it's actually really popular, because it does all of the things a delinquent manga should do. It lacks all of the special qualities of an original story. So in this video, I'd like to share my first impression, discuss how it does everything it's supposed to and nothing it should, but also explain why I'm still holding out for season 2. Now, as a quick disclaimer, I should point out that this is just a review of the anime, and I have not read any of the manga. That being said, if you look at the scores for this series, it averages above a 9 on MangaDex. So the implication would be that the manga is at least decent. And it also goes to show just how popular this series is. I had never even heard of it until last year when the anime debuted. Last year, it was one of the most popular anime of that season. And if you look at season 2 on Mal, it's one of the 3 most anticipated anime for this spring. Plus, it's got over 6 million copies in circulation. So clearly, it's a popular series. It's not exactly setting records, but it's clearly popular, and as someone who loves delinquent stories like Tokyo Revengers and loves delinquent characters like Yusuke or Chosuke, I was excited to check out Windbreaker for myself. Granted, I tempered my expectations and went into this with an open mind, but even then, all I can describe my first impression as is whelming. The story starts with our main character, Sakura. Sakura gets into a lot of fights because he has different colored eyes and black and white hair. So he moves to a new town where he can enroll at Furin High School, the home of the famous Bofurin gang. When he gets to town, he meets Kotoha, a girl who works at the local cafe where everyone in Bofurin hangs out. She explains that Bofurin isn't your typical gang, and when he watches some of its officers defend the town from random thugs, Sakura learns that this gang is really more like a team of teenage cops. Now, that first episode is pretty good. For a first episode, I was excited to see a gang of kids that went out of their way to protect the town. It's like, oh, okay, so they're like punks, but they know everyone's name and they keep everyone safe. Not that different from your typical delinquent with a heart of gold trope, but that's what I like, so that's what I want to see. Naturally, I kept watching, waiting to see how this would get fleshed out. Episode 2 features Sakura before his entrance ceremony. He goes to the cafe and meets Kotoha, who makes him the anime cooking staple, omurice. It's here that he meets Nirei, an awkward kid who's used to getting walked all over but joins Bofurin so he can be stronger. Sakura later finds Nirei getting mugged when he saves this girl from thugs. So he saves Nirei thanks Sakura, Sakura gets embarrassed because he's super serious, and then the two characters go to their entrance ceremony. Like the first episode, this episode isn't so bad as an introduction to the story and how it tends to structure itself. It's a bit tropey, but it shows the vulnerable side of Sakura, and establishes the dynamics with Kotoha at the cafe. But by the end of it, I kinda just wanted to see this entrance ceremony, considering how much this high school's been hyped up. So I went right into episode 3, only to find out that these high school students aren't actually in high school. And that's where all of the problems started. But real quick before I get into that, make sure to become a channel member if you like the video so far. You get exclusive emojis and loyalty badges, and you can pick which series I cover next. Anyway, I started episode 3 expecting some big entrance ceremony. You get into the episode and Sakura walks into this school that had me tripping out of my mind. Here I am thinking Japanese schools are so much stricter than other schools, and these kids are all hanging out at Hollywood Arts High School with Tori. Unfortunately, we did not get to see Victoria Justice. In fact, Sakura walks into his class and it's just a bunch of kids and no desks. And then I'm waiting to see their teacher, and you just get one of the captains telling them they're gonna go on patrol at 10 o'clock in the morning? On a school day? On their first day of school? So I'm watching these kids walk around town and do community service, still waiting to see the school part of this high school show. And before I know it, an enemy gang is waltzing up to the school with a bullhorn declaring they want to start a street fight. So at this point, I caved and went on Google to confirm whether or not I was in fact tripping. To my surprise, I wasn't tripping because there was a bunch of other people asking where these teachers were. And the best answer I could find was, well, actually, there isn't one. The whole time I'm thinking to myself, so wait a minute, it's a high school gang. It's called Furin High School, so they have to be in school, right? Like, you do see Kotoha studying from a textbook, so clearly there is a school with teachers handing out homework somewhere in this district. And according to manga readers, the author's best answer is, well, everything happens when the kids aren't in class. Which is fine, I guess. But it still doesn't make sense because they all hang out at a school covered in graffiti. So clearly it's an abandoned school, which means these kids are walking all the way to this other school either in between class or after class. And presumably they're just walking around town all day, not in class. Now look, I get it, this is a delinquent story, but there's being delinquent and then there's just La La Land. Like, this is a story where this high school gang defends the town, walks around town like local cops, and they are never in class. And everyone is cool with it? Like what? The issue here is there's nothing real about this show. Like, it's one thing to have a fantasy where high school kids can be local heroes and hang out outside of class. But if you have high school kids, then show them struggling as high school kids. For example, Yu Yu Hakusho is barely about high school, but you have a whole storyline where Yusuke is skipping school because the teachers want him kicked out, kids from other schools always want to fight him, and he has to watch over his mother. Yusuke was barely going to school, but you still see his struggles as a high school student, and that's why so many kids relate to that show. If it weren't for the fact that they literally hang out in a high school and say they go to high school, I would have no way of knowing these kids are actually high school students. So even just 3 episodes in, the show feels completely detached from reality, which is a wild thing to say about a show that is basically Tokyo Revengers without all of the time travel. It's crazy because Tokyo Revengers has 2 big complaints. Obviously, there's the issues with the ending, but beyond that, you would always see people saying how corny the show was. People would say how corny Takemichi was because he was a crybaby, and because the show was all about trying to be good. Ironically, Windbreaker's main character is one of the corniest characters I've ever seen. He's got 2 emotions. Either he wants to fight, or he blushes and gets embarrassed. Those are literally his only 2 emotions. At least Takemichi is a real character with issues and a personality. And personality is one of the big reasons I just can't get into Windbreaker. Tokyo Revengers has tons of personality. It captures the 90s and 2000s era of delinquents perfectly with all the jackets and uniforms. And especially the bikes. Motorcycles are a big part of the culture, not just because Japan is home to Honda and Suzuki and Kawasaki and Yamaha, not just because this was the first generation of real sports bikes, but because kids want freedom, and what is more free than a punk doing 100 down the streets of Tokyo? As someone who loves motorcycles and owns one, this was such a cool thing to see represented. And to that you might say, well, that's not fair. Windbreaker is a different story, and you can't compare it to Tokyo Revengers. Which, if things were different, I might concede, but considering they're in the same genre, it's hard to ignore the blatant difference in quality. Even ignoring all the time travel stuff, Tokyo Revengers is a relatable show based in reality. You see kids fist fighting, but you also see kids fighting with knives and guns, breaking each other's bones, getting sent to the hospital, even dealing drugs and getting arrested. Tokyo Revengers is a delinquent show that is like the poster boy for delinquents with hearts of gold, but it also grounds the story in real issues like broken homes, violence, and crime. Meanwhile, Windbreaker takes all of the bad stuff stuff like the drugs and the gore, and all you get is a bunch of kids skipping school and doing whatever they want. It's a decent story, but feels like a total fantasy because there's no real struggles in the show. And it wouldn't be so bad if I liked the characters more, but on top of the fact that Windbreaker heavily relies on these tropes without really adding anything to them, all of its characters are like Sakura. They're all one-dimensional with no unique backstories or quirks. You can take any delinquent type character from any other show, and they would be 10 times better than the characters in Windbreaker. For example, Josuke is a delinquent. He's not in a gang, but he's got the pompadour and he's always hustling people. But he's also a fleshed out character with a single mom who was raised by his grandfather and has a number of conflicting personality traits. Freaking Ryunosuke is better than these characters, and he's basically a walking, talking trope. But he's a cool character that not only embodies the trope, but also adds to it in such a silly way that he stands out and feels like an honor to the trope. The characters in Windbreaker all have like one emotion, and you don't get any of their backstories. So all they feel like are tropes. And like I said before, the show is super corny. Like, just to reiterate, this show enters a tournament arc 4 episodes in. It's a series of one-on-one fights that all take like a whole episode basically, meaning like 60% of the first season is a tournament arc. And every fight is the same. It starts out with a bad guy who's like, ooh, I'm gonna get you. The other character is like, hey, maybe don't be a loser. And then the bad guy is all like, wow, you're such a good guy. Maybe I'll stop being such a loser. And the worst of it is Sakura. Like, on top of the fact that he's two-dimensional, he has some of the corniest inner dialogue I have ever seen in any anime. Like, his inner dialogue will be like, man, I really want to fight this guy, but maybe he's not so bad after all. Is this what it means to have a conversation with my fists? Like, whenever he has an inner dialogue, I can't help but think of that one clip of the kid playing Call of Duty.
Well, there's a gamer girl in my lobby.
Stop.
Should I tell her how I feel about her?
Please don't. No. Please don't.
No. Then she'll know I'm a simp.
Refrain.
Oh, no.
I know what I'll do.
The bottom line is I want to like Windbreaker, but it's just super corny, the characters are kinda basic, and as far as season 1 goes, it uses all of the same tropes without adding to them in any unique ways. So now that I've utterly trashed on this show, why am I still holding out for season 2? Well, first of all, season 1 is only 13 episodes, so I feel like it's kind of harsh to judge a series that's like 5 years old just on 13 episodes. Plus, with the manga having such high ratings, and with manga fans saying there's more to look forward to later on, I do want to see what this series has to offer. As much as I might seem like a hater, I really do want to like this show. I like the fact that Bofurin patrols the town and knows everybody. I like that Kotoha is like the big sister and everyone comes to hang out with her. Windbreaker has potential, especially considering it's using some of my favorite tropes. So I do want to give it a chance in season 2. As much as I don't like the first season, I seriously hope that season 2 makes it one of my favorite new shows in what is already my favorite genre. But now I'd like to hear what you think. How would you rate Windbreaker? How does it compare to other series? Share your thoughts and see what everyone else has to say down in the comments. I'll pick my favorite and share it as comment of the week on my community tab. And don't forget to become a channel member. You get custom emojis and badges, you get to pick which series I cover next, and you can even get your name in future videos. Also, check out my other anime videos, which you can find in the playlist linked right here. Until then, thank you for watching, and I hope to hear from you soon.